Over the weekend, Damian Lillard won the three-point shooting contest, and he won the All-Star Game MVP. And I think that's perfect. Because it just shows that none of that has anything to do with actually winning basketball games. And this is a really, really hard one. It's a really, really hard one. I think Trae Young's an example. I think Trae Young is, I think a lot of an amount, maybe not a lot, a portion of the criticism can be unfair. Right? Here he didn't originally make the All-Star game. Did he make the All-Star game as a replacement? I didn't watch enough of the All-Star game to actually know. I'm sorry. It was just terrible basketball. But Trae Young did not make the All-Star game, and you're like, wait, what? He's incredibly popular in Atlanta. He's an amazing offensive player. He can pass, he can shoot, he's got crazy range, and there are nights in which... So he ended up making the All-Star game as an alternate. And it's one of those, like, let's not freak out, he's going to be an All-Star. But it does say something about especially the coaches and players and how they view him. Some of it's unfair, but some of it is the... there's an expression in basketball. You ready? Every bad team has a leading scorer. Every bad team has a leading scorer. And what does that mean? Just because you score the most points does not a great player make. And I'll say Carmelo Anthony was this guy when he was in the NBA as well. I know they went to one Western Conference Finals when he was with the Denver Nuggets. And, when he went to the Knicks, they had to trade away basically everything in the kitchen sink in order to get him. But Carmelo was the best scorer in the league. There was about 5 years there where he was the best scorer in the league. And then Kevin Durant surpassed him. Right? But he was the best, and he could score really at three levels, mostly at two, three being three-pointer, mid-range, post. He was great at the post, great at the mid-range. And later in his career, he became a three-point shooter. But did he elevate his teammates? And did you win because of his points? And there's no greater social or basketball experiment than Damian Lillard to the Bucks. Right? Go look at Jrue Holiday and his career. Right? Type in Jrue Holiday stats reference. You guys doing it? If you're at your cubicle, go ahead, look it up, pull it up. So Jrue Holiday, if you look at his stats, you're like, okay, Damian Lillard averaged 29 points a game. Right? Last year, Jrue Holiday averaged 19 points a game. Well, I got to tell you, aren't they going to be 10 points better? Right? Remember, last year, they won 58 games. And they were bounced in the playoffs. Part of the reason they were bounced in the playoffs was Giannis wasn't healthy 2 of the games. Part of the reason was that Jimmy Butler just torched him the last couple of games. All right. But Damian Lillard last year with the Portland Trailblazers, he averaged 32 points a game. Right? So you sit there and go like, hey, we have a guy who averages, 19? And we bring in a guy that averages 32 a game. Oh, yeah, by the way, Damian Lillard, 7.3 assists a game. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, what about Jrue Holiday? 7.4 assists, same thing. So they still pass the same. Only one guy scores 13 more points per game. There's no way that the Bucks won't be at least the same, if not better, if not more explosive. And you could sit there and go like, all right, well, at least they'll average the same or more points per game. Last year, the Milwaukee Bucks averaged 116 points per game. 116 points per game. This year, they're averaging 122 points a game. So they are averaging more. But so is their opponent. And they're losing more games. And even after changing coaches, they've lost 7 of the last 10. 3 and 7 under Doc Rivers. So this is not me telling you that that Damian Lillard stinks. He's overrated. But what he is it's really, really hard to see when winning is not the main thing, when your role is to be the best player and to score as much as you can, and you're not expected to elevate your teammates, what it's like when we put you in a championship environment. And I get it. Do I think ultimately it'll be better than it's been? Yes. Right? Yes. There's a process there. Process. Right? There's a process of getting there. There's a process of working together and figuring out that we're new and the rotations are different. He's got to figure out to play within their defensive system. And then that system changed once they added Doc Rivers. Like, I get all of that. But the shooting isn't worse. Case in point this weekend. Everybody loves the guy. Like, there's nothing not to like about Damian Lillard, right? Went to Weber State. He's been in the shadows of Steph Curry in the West, and they could never get past the Warriors. And what did you always hear when they couldn't get past the Warriors? Well, he doesn't have the surrounding cast of Steph Curry. Now he does. Right? Now he does. Remember, every bad team has a leading scorer. And at some point, we have to make this assessment statistically great or really great. And this is not anything new. Do the kids know how dominant Dominique Wilkins was statistically? Do they? Like, Dominique Wilkins statistically was incredible and impressive. Like, he went through like a 5 or 6 year stretch there where he was right there with Michael Jordan to be the leading scorer in the NBA. And he was right there with Michael Jordan in dunk contests. But you know what he wasn't? He wasn't right there with Michael Jordan. There is not one human being alive that at this moment goes like, you know who was the equal to Michael Jordan? Dominique Wilkins. Do you know why? Because he couldn't win. Because he couldn't win. And Dominique Wilkins is a Hall of Famer. And Dominique Wilkins was a great scorer. But he wasn't a winning player. There's really no other way to express it. You know? No other way to express it. Dominique Wilkins was the human highlight film. Also, one of the great nicknames of all time, right? I mean, it's not like they call it the human. There's never been a human lowlight film. Dominique Wilkins averaged 27, 30, 29, 30, 26, 26, 26, 28, 30, 26. He's the human highlight reel? Okay. That wouldn't work nowadays, by the way, because nobody knows what a reel is. But good call. It was the human highlight reel. Do people know? I guess maybe it will be because now people know what a reel is because they think the reel is on Instagram. But really a reel is, a reel, like it was a round tape, right? Like, help me out, Jay Stu. Like,
I feel the need to just clear this up. I feel the need. The human highlight film.
It's human highlight film? Thank you. It was human highlight film?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Human highlight film is what I see too. Neek, human highlight film. I don't know who anybody called him Nikazoid, but I do see that listed on social media.
But, and by the way, to your point, like, remember the Hawks? They became, at least on paper, a pretty good team when they had like Doc Rivers and Kevin Willis and Tree Rollins. I remember John Koncak and those guys. Like, they put some players around them, and it still didn't work.
No. Couldn't beat the Celtics. Couldn't beat the Bulls. Why? Those guys were winning players. By the way, Dominique Wilkins, Kevin Willis, Doc Rivers, Randy Whitman, Tree Rollins, Cliff Livingston. I mean, and to people go like, wow, Michael Jordan had Hall of Famers. Like, let me just explain something to people who aren't old enough or are disingenuous with the Jordan thing. Like, Scottie Pippen, when he got to the Bulls, everybody thought he was too soft. even through the first 5 years, Scottie Pippen was seen as, there's the word, and I think we all know the word. Okay? It's another word for feline, right? And that's what Scottie Pippen was seen. And the Detroit Pistons thought they could punk him. Right? The Jordan rules were knock him on his ass every time he drives, but make him try and win games by himself. And then they were just going to punk Scottie Pippen and punk the rest of the Bulls. And it worked for 2 years. And then Jordan got more physical. They put in the triangle offense where he passed the ball. And when all the help came to him, he found open teammates and they won games. But like Michael Jordan's centers through 6 NBA titles were medical Bill Cartwright, Will Perdue, and Luke Longley. Okay? And there is not any discussion about the greatest players of all time or greats of a generation that anyone would ever go, you know who's one of the all-time greats? Luke Longley. You know, no, but Jordan elevated him. Steve Kerr, people are like, oh, Steve Kerr hit all those shots. Go and look at Steve Kerr's career. He was a career backup. And because of the fit of playing alongside Jordan, where all you had to do was guard your tail off and make shots in space within the offense, and that's all he did. John Paxson, same thing. He didn't achieve anything elsewhere, but there he was great. B.J. Armstrong, same thing, great. Yes, you need a specific type of guard that didn't need the ball in their hands, but he didn't have great dudes there. Even Ron Harper, who is an all-time great teammate of Jordan. Like Ron Harper was a big scorer on the Cavs, tore his knee, and kind of had to remake himself into a guy who could just make shots and guard multiple positions. Jordan elevated those guys. The best of the best elevate people. And look, I'm sure there's LeBron fans like, look what he did when he was in Cleveland. That's a perfect snapshot of it. Now, he didn't have to do it in Miami. He didn't have to elevate Chris Bosh. He didn't have to elevate Dwayne Wade. Didn't have to elevate Ray Allen. Like, those guys were already great players. Maybe Bosh in terms of reputation-wise in the big moment. But if you want to know why you can't have a legitimate conversation about Damian Lillard and Steph Curry, for example. Because people are like, well, you know, they're kind of the same, right? Both great shooters. Steph gets more love because people like Steph more because of cost. Like, no, they don't. Steph's better. How do I know? When you surround Steph with great players, he elevates their level. And when you surround him with average players, he elevates their level. And look, there's only so much you can do. I get it. Steph had the 1 year where he led the league in scoring, and they were a 500 team, right? There's only so much you can do. So I didn't expect more of Lillard last year, but I expect more of him this year. And the inability to find the perfect niche role, elevate his teammates to a championship level when he has better teammates than he's had in years in Portland, that's a problem. That's a problem. So, yeah, in the weekend where playing defense and being a teammate, and doesn't mean he's a bad teammate. There's a soft spot there in between. He's not Trae Young defensively who just gives. The issue with Trae Young is he just gives up. Like, go back and look at the Luka. Did he have 72? A good portion of him, he drove right at Trae Young, and Trae Young just kind of gets out of the way. Like, I'm not going to do anything with that. Business decision. That's not Lillard. He's just not very good defensively, and there's not a ton of toughness and scrappiness on the defensive side. And the offensive side, he needs the ball. And then you have Giannis who's like, I kind of need the ball too. And you have Chris Middleton, who's not as good as he used to be, but also needs the ball. He's not making Chris Middleton better. And it's one of those things. We look at Jrue Holiday and we're like, wow, Jrue Holiday averaged so many less points per game, but there's so many little things that don't go in the stat column that you can't see, that you don't understand at both ends of the floor, that quite obviously Jrue Holiday brought to the table that Damian Lillard has yet to.